The key, a lot of what's going on is the flavor. The fuel it's using. The fuel is big of a part of the recipe than the seasonings and the whole bit. I mean, the fuel is just as important, what you're burning. The quality of pellets and the flavor of pellets, to most people, well, I bought a bag of pellets for $5. I bought this one for this. I bought this one for that. It was nothing to say about the quality and what they liked about a pellet. It all has to come down to how cheap they can buy a pellet. And it just amazed me that the industries like that bag of charcoal back in the day. Ain't that right, Dave? They don't have a clue what's in that bag, and they really didn't care. It's all about the cost of that bag. They didn't give a crap.
Right.
You know, is it going to cook some food? Is it going to taste okay? That's it. But all this crud, all this saying, all these fancy dingling bags out there, and then you start seeing a whole, okay, you got 75% people talking about what they buy a pellet for. Then you got about 22% of them talking about, well, they all taste the same. To me, I don't taste any difference in any of them. And it's like, there's probably the most honest answer out there right now.
Right.
You see something totally 100% different than the pit boss, didn't you?
I did.
And you went home and got you a PG 500, and that kind of turned your world upside down, didn't it?
Oh, it did. Yeah. You put a good pellet in the PG 500 and you'll experience flavor you've never tasted in your life.
Dave, give us a little background on your fishing and your shooting bows. You shot bows for competitiveness, didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
That's how you start a campfire in Carter County.
Freaking awesome.
You're watching Pellet Cooker University with Fast Eddy. Light 'em up.
Welcome back to the Pellet Cooker Podcast. And today we have a guest that I've met just in the last few years, Dave Nance with Ozark Natural Grilling Pellets. And Dave's the guy that's changed my mind about the wood pellet industry. And we're going to pick his brain here a little bit, but let's get to know Dave. And Dave, I've already introduced you, but give us a background on growing up in the Ozarks and, you know, a little bit about what you did and all that. Let's kind of get to know you and who you are.
Well, it's pretty simple around here. You know, we're kind of backwoods. You know, grew up hunting and fishing. I guess loving every day, you know how that goes. You know, early on, I went to school, of course. Got out of school pretty early, went to work at Royal Oak Charcoal. Was my first job. And
your very first job was Royal Oak?
My very first job was Royal Oak Charcoal.
So
yes, it was.
you never did.
Well,
you
it wasn't called Royal Oak then, but it was Royal Oak, yes.
What did they call it back in the day? You remember?
They called it Ozarks because we're in the Ozarks, and they called it Ozark.
Did they have their own brand of charcoal at that time?
You know, there were several brands. There's a million brands up there. You know, they put it in every bag in the world, but it all comes out of the same pile. I worked up there in the bagging shed. You know, we had a big old huge pile, and all the charcoal went into the bagging shed. Don't know a lot about what went on in there because I worked outside. You know, I was the one that fed it, and but I do know that we got the charcoal out of the same pile every day.
So you fed it. I mean, did you use like a loader or something?
Yeah. You take a loader and you feed it. It's basically a shaker because they'll do size it, and you'll have to remove, you know, what they call brands that don't burn all the way up. They call them a brand. It's just wood that didn't make charcoal, and you know, it kind of sizes it as it goes. Yep, it's
so
actually
like
kind of. Yep, screen. That's exactly what it was. It went through a couple, 3 screeners, you know, different sizes moved. And I think we would, of course, it's been 40 years ago now, 45, but don't remember like it's yesterday, but I do remember it. It was actually a nasty, dirty job.
Like it? I mean, it definitely wasn't very clean.
Oh, no, it's horrible.
And it's probably pretty dusty too, isn't it? I mean, with it all being
actually pitiful.
Oh, yeah.
You would come out of there just soot black. You know, they have showers up there. Your clothes, basically, it's terrible, actually.
You look like a coal miner, huh?
That's exactly it. Yeah, actually, coal miners were cleaner than us.
Boy, man, I can only imagine. Your life expectancy, do you have any kind of ventilation for you to wear or mask or anything like that?
No, not then. You know, it's different now. They have afterburners up there. You know, they've built different kilns, and I can't really speak to what it is now, but I know how it was, you know. I think.
Right.
Yeah, sure enough.
Well, so that was your first job. What got you going into the logging industry? after that, after this terrible job
Right.
of being up there messing with this wood that's been put into these kilns and then snuffed out. It's just because of the nature of the beast being down in the woods. You
Well,
use
yes,
the natural
kinda.
habitat. Yeah.
Well, there's not a lot of, there's not just a whole lot of industry down here other than wood. And I left Royal Oak, put a little time in St. Louis for a construction company, but I didn't like city life. I wanted to come back home. So that's how I got my first logging job. The guy said, "Hey, can you cut logs?" And I said, "Who couldn't?" Never had cut a log in my life. And I just said, "Yeah, who can't?" And started cutting logs. And then I spent now I've been in the wood industry for at least 38 years, 40 years, something like that.
Well, so that kind of got you into looking at land, didn't it?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yep. Of course, you buy land, timberland, and then I realized because I like to hunt and fish, everybody wants their own piece of dirt to, go hunting on. And so I started buying land, and then I realized that everybody else was probably like me around here, wanted some of their own land. So bought a little more than the average guy just to resell. A lot of times we'd harvest the wood off of it, and that put me into the wood. And you have different species, and loved barbecue ever since, working at the charcoal plant. Charcoal made me sick. You used to think it was barbecue sauce, but charcoal will actually make you sick to your stomach. A lot of people believes, well, I can't really eat barbecue sauce, but it's really the gases in charcoal, and the gases are unreal volatile. I mean, there's been the doors blow off them kills up there. There's been a couple of my friends killed up there, and there's so much gas buildup it just blowed the doors right off of them. And then I got
it's because such incomplete combustion that they're after. It's
Yes.
kind of like backdraft on the fire department industry where I come from. You when you looked at a fire or you looked at a house fire or something like that, I'm sizing it up and grading what's going on there by the color of the smoke and where the smoke's breathing. Is this thing trying to suck air, around the windows, and you're sizing up the property, you're sizing up what's going on, and it's just. I just can't dream of how horrible but I imagine there was like a revolving door of help coming in and out of that place up there, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah, it actually, and still is. I mean, they say it's a little better, but I mean, it was just like you really didn't know who you was working with from week to week, month to month, especially complete turnover.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now you were talking about, species of trees and things. And when you started logging, what was the most common wood that, you got the best money for down in that part of what you were really looking at in the logging industry?
Mostly your oaks, your red oak, white oak. White oak still to this day is one of the biggest because of stave production. And then you got your flooring. Hickory's up there too, but white oak is kind of where it's at still to this day because they want to make the staves out of them for the whiskey barrels.
That's one they pay the most money for.
Yes. Yeah. Good clear white oak.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then of course you have veneer, but mostly it's the stave logs, and the floor, they go hand in hand.
Uh-huh. And flooring was used all kinds of different woods.
Yes.
In that. Not a lot of softwood down there, is there?
No, not compared to some areas. There's not. We have, down in the bottoms, even in the river hills, you'll have some softwood in the creeks. And then, most people talk in softwood as in pine. We still have patches of pine, and that we
like
do.
Soft maples. Are there like soft maple down there too?
Not a lot. We're kind of south of that here.
Are you?
Yeah, we'll have just a little bit of maple. We have a little bit of about every kind of wood, but we're predominantly oak here. White oak, post oak, red oak. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And
yep.
So all those industries use that product. So you also got involved. So being a logger, you dealt with all the sawmills a bunch too, didn't you?
Oh yeah. Well, even sawmilled myself for a little while. Yeah, but mostly just logging. Yep.
And then you got into nowadays automated equipment is amazing what you watch on TV when they're logging.
Oh, right.
Got those track hoe looking things that grab those trees and hacks them off and sets them down, and strippers strip the limbs off of them. And
yes, sir. Have owned those. Had one of the first come to this part of the country.
Wow. Those are expensive too.
Yeah, they're not cheap.
And then the maintenance of keeping them up, it's like any any industry, you probably had to be a pretty good mechanic and a repair guy too, didn't you?
Right. Yeah. If you're logging, you better know how to fix it. It's a rough job. You break a lot of stuff.
Right. So you got into logging and you were sawmilling too. Then, so what got you, I'm sure you were, after being in the charcoal industry and stuff like that, what developed your passion for the grilling and backyard cooking and stuff like that? Was it just being around friends, family and things, or did, what got you really going there?
Well, just loving barbecue, been grilling myself since 14, 15 years old on charcoal. And then, of course, being in the wood industry, some friends of mine started in heat, using the sawdust, as making heat pellets. And then, of course, wasn't long. And I actually went to work for them. And then next thing you know, I own it. And but I wanted to make a grilling pellet. Once I got started on grilling pellets, I realized when barbecue sauce made me sick, it was charcoal. And I don't have that. It's hard to explain. It's just, I just didn't get sick, fall over sick. But, we feel like you might have been out on a bender, wake up the next morning, your stomach kind of hurts. And charcoal, that does not happen with pellets. It doesn't happen with a good pellet anyway. Of course, I usually only use mine. But I don't believe it's a problem with most pellets at all, because you're not using an actual charcoal. And, you got to make the pellet. And once you start choosing good quality wood and make the same pellet and, the process of it, you can come up with a darn good pellet. We had a conversation once about some people saying that a pellet had too much flavor. And we've laughed about that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm going to back you up before we get too far away here. Okay. I want to back you up for the amount of sawdust that you're making. And it really becomes when you've got a sawmill and stuff, getting rid of that waste material can be a problem. I mean, you really got to figure out it's a management issue, isn't it?
Yes. Yep. That's really what started the heat pellet, because it's just biomass, that's what it's called. And that way you make a heat pellet and you kind of kill two birds with one stone. You get rid of a waste product and make heat. And it's a very, very, very good deal and a good idea. It sure is.
Yeah, that started really taking off in the 80s.
Yes.
When the pellet stoves and furnaces and biomass furnaces and things came along, was actually late 70s, right in there when, we were in our teenage years. So finally getting to do something with it. But prior to, you can only, and then there's mulch. So isn't mulch mainly the outside of the logs? It's not necessarily, it's bigger chips or whatever. Tell us what the difference is between the sawdust or what's making of pellets and what makes mulch.
Well, the mulch is a slab that is cut off of a log that used to go like to the charcoal plant for us right here. My pellet plant was 5 miles away, and the sawmill, same thing. But you take that slab, which is at least, I'm going to say it's 50% bark, and sometimes could even be more. And that's what's ground up for mulch. And then you debark logs, which is pure bark mulch, but that's where your mulch comes from. If you was to just grind plain wood, it doesn't make a good mulch anyway. It's predominantly the bark.
It's the outer and the barks off the wood. Okay.
Yeah. That's what we wanted to do with ours. We didn't want to put it into a pellet. It's not good in a pellet.
Right. And then I noticed when I was down, you guys had a dyeing plant where you would dye it too. So you make all the different colors of the mulch for people, didn't you?
Yep. So, yeah, we had 4 or 5. Sure did.
Yeah. Well, then now you're talking about charcoal plants, okay, and what was done with some of this waste material in your area. Let's talk about probably the biggest monster in the room down there where you're at, especially when you're talking about dealing with green sawdust and hardwood sawdust. Tell us about the needs of the carbon plant that's down in your area.
They try to keep that pretty secret, but they do make carbon out of sawdust, and they don't want no bark. They absolutely don't want no bark, don't want no pine. Well, we've talked about it. It's a huge competitor for the type of wood that's needed to make a quality pellet, because I don't want no bark and I don't want no pine.
And you want it green. You don't
And
want it
I want
kiln
it green.
dried.
Yes, I don't want it dried.
There's many of those. Let's go back, talking about like the flooring plants and the wood processors for, making cabinetry and all that. That stuff is all kiln dried.
Yeah, it's
really
cooked right
solid.
down 4 to 6%. Yes.
Yeah, so the moisture is gone out of it too.
It's gone.
And they're a huge sawdust maker compared to just a standard plant that's cutting for like making pallets or whatever. I mean, there's just tons and tons of sawdust that come out of that, isn't it?
Yeah. Your bigger flooring plants and bigger cabinet shops is, tons, like you say, literally tons, truckloads and tons.
Well, I talked, a fellow I got involved with pretty hard is a guy named Larry Ragland. And what was so special about Larry Ragland, first of all, he's a 5-time overall winner of the Baja 1000. We'll get in, people will find out about my passion for off-road racing. And I restored a car Larry made famous back in the day. When I was talking to Larry, he actually started a place called Wood Stuff. This is in the Phoenix, Arizona area. And he was telling me, now, Larry, when he finally sold out to Sealy, he had 950 employees. And the biggest problem with him, and he thought about putting his own pellet mill in Phoenix, Arizona, because of all the sawdust he had from his Wood Stuff company. They ended up making furniture there, but the big thing Wood Stuff started with was making water beds, was their thing.
Water beds?
Water beds, where you'd
have
a bladder. Yeah.
Yep.
You had a bladder, and everybody had the framework made and had drawers underneath them and things. I had a water bed for years, and that's how Larry got into that business. Was in 1976. He was actually driving a concrete truck at the time, and he wanted a water bed, but he couldn't afford, to go and the shops that were selling them, they were pretty new still at that time. So he went and rented the equipment from a tool rental company, and he built himself a water bed. And then he had friends and family that wanted it, wanted one. So Larry, well, maybe I can make a few of these and for friends and family. And next thing you know, that's in 1976. Okay. A guy's going from a concrete truck driver to 1983 is when he sold out to Sealy, and he had 950 employees.
Wow.
Now look at that time frame, about 8 years right there, that he was able to go from that to a major player where he had almost a quarter of a mile of buildings under roof in that Phoenix area there where Wood Stuff was at. So he's a heck of a story, but he was telling me, he seriously thought about getting into the pellet business to try to get rid of his waste, because that was a huge cost to him, was getting rid of all that waste.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So I thought that was a really interesting deal. But of course, then again, they used all kinds of different woods and soft woods. And I mean, it wasn't necessarily all hardwoods. That's what, and try to bring that back up is these plants all do handle different types of woods. And,
right.
And so how many of these places have you ever been to where they are separating the species of sawdust?
Well, let me think. Zero. Well,
zero. Now, come on, Dave. Don't blow shit up our ass here. Okay.
No, I've been to a couple
every bag of pellets out there you see is going to talk about it's a blend of this, and this. Okay.
Yep.
And there's how many different bags are we seeing that's got all these different flavors on there, and everybody thinks that they've got a certain flavor that they like. Now, can you elaborate on that for us? I mean, some of these guys that are selling specialty wood products and things. Why don't you elaborate for people on the industry of the smoke and mirrors is what I want to call it. But
it is smoke and mirrors.
It's smoke and mirrors. But what does it cost for a trailer load of apple wood?
Oh, Lord. A trailer load of apple wood is probably going to be in the 20 year dealing with 25 ton. I can't figure it out. Let's just do it easy. 2 times 2, you're looking at $5,000. It takes 2 of them green, actually 2.2 green to make 1 load of pellets. And I think I have as good a source as any. I've dealt with, I've got a gentleman here close to me. I say close, couple 100 miles away, and he has a brother that's in Pennsylvania, out in the cherry country, apple country. These woods are so, I just want to laugh. When I see pure apple, pure cherry, I'm not saying on a small scale you can't, but, just truckload after truckload, I got to call BS on that. Been to some of the plants. They have some of the wood on the yard. One of the biggest ones I was ever to had probably 2 or 3 types of wood all piled on the same pile out there in the dirt. And it might have started out to be separate when they was one load dump there, but then when they dump one beside it, another in front of that one, it just that's
so
stuff.
this isn't all going into buildings and stuff. It's just sitting out in the open. It's just chewed up sawdust out there.
A couple,
what happens?
3 that I've been to, they've been out in the open.
So what happens if this is green sawdust that's out there like that? How long does it take before you start to see change in it? Because doesn't it start to compost?
Well, yeah, it starts turning dark. Even like mine, I keep mine in a building and on concrete and covered, and you can tell a pretty good difference in the color. Like when it starts, it's going to start the process in just a week or two. And you go this time of the year in the heat, you go 4 weeks and you can turn, some nice white oak, post oak material so dark, put it through a press and it comes out looking like mesquite. It gets dark. So
real dark.
Yeah, very dark. And so it starts the process.
It can change colors if it still has a lot of moisture in it, is what you're saying. What I have seen too, though, it builds heat and it starts to break down itself and it starts to make and it can actually, be a fire issue too.
Oh, exactly. Old sawdust piles, I know there's a couple of them that I know has been burning for years here close. They will build up enough heat. They will catch themselves on fire, short of, pulling it all out and loading it up somewhere and dumping it in a lake. You're not going to put it out. It can be rain on it. It can be on fire for 10 years, some of these big piles.
Well, so when I'm seeing, some of these guys that are standing on these big piles of wood out there in these fields or on some property, and they're standing up on top of it and talking about how great their wood is that they're making for pellets, and you see all the chips or shred or whatever it is, it's like, it better not be sitting there too long, or otherwise you're going to have this composting effect going on, and I think once you start seeing that composting, what I'm trying to get at here is once you get most of the moisture out of that wood, as far as making a good pellet, what we have found out, and you have taught me this, is you've lost the phenols and you're losing the flavor that wood will produce in a pellet. Correct?
Right. Yep. I only make out of green sawdust, flash dry it, and only dry it down to the necessary moisture. Don't take, which is in that, a lot of people want to press at 10 and 12%. I always try to press at 14, 16 gets to pushing it, but it turns into a better, more flavorful pellet. You've left some moisture in it. You haven't, it's like freeze drying bananas. The real banana is better than the freeze dried banana.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed and that's what I like about what you've taught is that the flavor is in the phenols in the wood, and if you guys start looking at some of these YouTube channels, the one guy explains it pretty well is Chief Firewood, and his son's got one out there. There's 2 or 3 YouTubes there, but Javier's his name.
Yes.
And it wasn't necessarily their channel, but Javier talks about how, they're big post oak guys down there, and post oak is in the white oak family. Is that correct?
100%.
Yeah. So, and when people are looking at flavors of wood, they are looking at families of wood is what they're doing. And, processors or guys that are coming around selling you wood, they look at, well, if this thing makes a nut, they can consider it pecan or they can consider it hickory, right?
Correct. Yeah.
It's in the same family.
Yes.
So, they're looking at families of woods is what they're doing. But Javier went into about, if he picks up a log and he shows it real gray, he says, this is what my customers want. down here. And he's got some of the biggest barbecue joints that you read about on the Texas 50 and that. But the key, a lot of what's going on is the flavor. The fuel it's using. The fuel is as big of a part of the recipe than the seasonings and the whole bit. I mean, the fuel is just as important, what you're burning. So, and that's another thing too. It's hard to duplicate that offset cooking they do down there by buying a box of wood from your Academy Sports. Because in order for them to box that wood, what has to happen, Dave?
Well, they have to dry it. And
what happened? Right. How dry do they got to get it in order for it to not to stay in that box for a year or two?
I wouldn't be 100%, but I know it's going to mold. It's going to mold if it's much over 10%. I'm thinking. I don't even think you could send it out at 10%. I think it would mold
3, 4, 5%. Is where it's probably at. So therefore, if you're trying to go make a great product in an offset and you're going to go buy that boxed wood, first thing you're going to do, you're going to buy a bunch of it. You're going to spend a ton of money trying to run an offset on just a few sticks of wood, because that thing, depending upon the type of cooker, it can eat it up. But secondly is the flavor is not there. You're going to wonder at times, if you got wood from a local tree cutter and then you got the boxed wood, is going to be two different things. Totally.
Well, that same thing happens in pellets, Eddie. It's just, it's the same. Yeah, it happens in pellets with larger companies, that needs 40, 50 tractor trailer loads of wood a day to produce a pellet. That being the same wood, or even a wood that they know what it is impossible. When you start dealing with, 25 tons times 50, that's almost an impossibility.
Well, and it takes 2 trailer loads to make 1 trailer load of pellets.
Now,
basically.
if you're making green like I do, it takes just a little over 2 trailer loads, 2 1/4. And but now dry, where they hydrate it back, I just didn't like messing with dry.
Let's explain to our viewers what you're talking about hydrating back means when you go to a pellet mill. What do they do to activate the lignins in the wood on a really dry product? What do? They put steam.
They have to add water. They got steam. You got to add water. You got to add water or oil. You got to add water. There's a lot of oil gets added, but it's water. You got to hydrate it back. It's you try to press it dry, you just lock them up. The presses won't press it.
Right. Yeah. But you have to have that moisture content to activate the lignins in the wood. That's what makes that shine on the outside of the pellet too. Another thing is, in these big high-speed mills, the super, super high horsepower mills, another thing that becomes a problem is the length that makes it, how fast it spits that out of those dies as it's going into that mill. And usually when you see a long pellet, it's missed the mark of, got past a system of breaking it up, or the knives have gotten off of it. When you start seeing a lot of long pellets, you better walk away from it, because it's usually probably pretty hard. I used to walk around back in the day and I'd pick up pellets out of my hopper constantly, and I was constantly snapping the pellets between my fingers because I wanted to see the density. Some of them you could get the density where it's like a stick. You can't even break them. And our augers hate that.
Right.
There, so that was always a big concern of mine, especially any pellet manufacturers I had dealt with too. That was always their nemesis, was trying to figure out how to get those pellets shorter.
All right. Well, I had to when I was making a grilling pellet. Back in the day, I had a Pit Boss grill, and if you didn't put a little tiny pellet in it, you're jamming it. It didn't have near the, it was a good auger as say a PG 500. A Pit Boss. That's what I kind of cut my teeth on. That's how I kind of developed my pellet, is because if you didn't make it short, it's gonna jam it up.
Yeah, there's difference in equipment, and we'll get into that. Hopefully people will keep watching the podcast, because I'll get into explaining, some of the differences in the equipment, and also too, fluing comes into play. Airflow is a big deal, and pellets, they do start to swell when they get to a certain temperature before they start to fall apart. Okay.
Right.
You can get the temperature so high, they just turn to mush. Okay. Before they come out into the fire pot or come out and fall onto a ramp or whatever. I've had many I watched, there's a lot of things you got to pay attention to when we're designing equipment. I'll never forget all the mush I watched when I first started developing the pizza oven and the high temperatures that thing ran at, and the mush that I had coming out the auger. It was horrible there, trying to, figure out what was good, what it was going to take, and the design of get that thing where it was at, because at times I want to be up at 900 degrees,
All right.
Speaking of which, so now you've been messing around making pellets, but then you've got into how you and I met was this guy by the name of Bob Robinson.
Barbecue Bob.
And Barbecue Bob, he's quite the salesman, isn't he?
Barbecue Bob.
Well, that's how we met, wasn't it?
That is how we met.
Yes, you came to Kansas City.
Came to Kansas City.
Bob come down, and we met at my place and got to talking about my grills, actually, and the possibility of wanting to do a grill together and go on to the marketplace because of using my patent. And we had a discussion over that and everything. And then we got to going on about, because I started going on about how back in the day, I bought Pellet Cooker in the early 2000s. And I not only bought pelletcooker.com, but I bought grillingpellets.com too back then. And I think you made a certain remark.
I now know the asshole that did that.
I got the biggest kick out of that. But that's when you went to your truck and you brought out this bag of pellets that you manufacture. And I cooked with those pellets, and I said, oh, shit, there's something to this. Yeah. And we got involved together and popped off on grilling pellets, because there's not another smell out there when you smell grilling pellets burn. There's a harshness to that smoke that you're getting. It actually makes my nose twinge compared to other pellets smoke. I've been around this stuff this is my 35th year. Is when I got started in the pellet grill industry, or got involved with Bob Robinson and started selling those damn Traeger pellets, or Traeger grills. Okay. Traeger was never overly happy with me once I started doing my own thing, because I found out that first of all, I'm not going to be shipping pellets clear across the damn country. And so I needed to figure out what was going on. And so I ended up getting my own source done in the state of Missouri, kind of make a long story short. And I actually had his Pennington Seed, who was bagging for me, and did a real good job. And they had some sources where they would actually get some hickory broke out on some trailer loads. So I'm not going to complain about that at all. Those guys did a pretty fair job until one of those times when heating fuel shot through the roof and you couldn't make enough heating pellets in this country to try to keep the satisfied of the need of a big cold front come through, and the price of oil sky high went on. I don't think you were in the pellet business back in that time. That was probably, I'm going to say that was late 90s, early 2000 when that went on. So it was maybe a little later in 2000, might have been 3 or 4. But it definitely changed things. It really changed my mind on sources, what I was needing. And then that's right after I got hooked up with Cookshack too. The funny thing about Cookshack was on the pellet deal, and I'll bring this up. We'll probably bring this up when we do the interview with Stuart Powell. And of course, I always had my own pellet deal. Okay. And then when I worked my agreement with Cookshack, I was still selling my own pellets. And now they weren't called grilling pellets at the time. They were just fast Eddies. All right. And which Traeger always never did like me having my own pellet deal. But when you're trying to do commercial work and you're banging heads against gas all over, you can't have somebody dictate what the cost of cooking is going to be. Okay. Neither. I wasn't going to let them control the industry. Cookshack worked their royalty deal with Traegers. I had one, but then when we got together, they had to work their own contract with Traeger. And actually, that was about the time that they sold the business. And so there was a small royalty paid. We paid them for using the Traeger system. It's such a small royalty, it wasn't worth getting away from it, causing any harm to anybody, because we actually had to change everything to get our UL listings. And Joe said that, or the family, I won't just put it on Joe, but they said, this is a listed system, and UL never could find their file. So I think a lot of that was BS, what went on there. Of course, UL's a big outfit, big company. You can't, actually say that, but people we were dealing with never could find anything that Traeger had barbecue-wise that was UL listed. Now, they had their furnace stuff but so because we're moving down the path of getting into this commercial industry really hard, and we needed those safety testing done on our units. And so getting back to the pellet thing, Stuart gets a call from the folks at Traeger, and they start complaining that this is Cookshack is selling Traeger pellets to Traeger dealers, and they weren't liking that. Now, it said in the agreement with Traeger's that Cookshack had to buy pellets from them, and there was a special price because of, the volume that they were buying. But, of course, they're not a dealer neither. They're a manufacturer. So there was a special manufacturer price. It did not say in that deal who Cookshack could sell pellets to. It just was how they could buy pellets was all that was stated in this. So they called up and tell Cookshack they cannot sell pellets to Traeger dealers. And as Cookshack doesn't qualify a customer when they call in and order a pallet of pellets. We don't look at, are you a customer of ours? If you order a pallet of pellets and pay for it, we're going to send you a pallet of pellets. Okay. And Traeger's telling us, no, you can't do that. And that's not in the contract. Only thing that's in the contract, like I said, is the price and what we have to do. And of course, you got to take them by the trailer loads. Well, they were already withholding 3 trailer loads of pellets from us. And of course, we're trying to get people, running their businesses on these things. And this is getting pretty nasty. They got some lawsuit stuff getting ready to fling around. And that's when they decided they didn't need that little small royalty anymore and going to cut Cookshack off, which was no problem because I already still had my own pellet deal going. And so then me and Cookshack hooked up together on the pellets, and that's just kept the ball right on rolling. So it was kind of interesting in the pellet world. And also too, if you guys go back and you'll pay attention and look at the Bob Robinson interview that I did, you'll hear us talk about, what the early days of the pellet grill was like and why the business model was set up the way it was back then. So it got a little windy right there, but, talking about, some history and whys and whats and things. But Dave, you changed the map, brother. Okay. When you start processing this green wood and making this green wood as green as you can possibly get it without any bark in it, these frickin' pellets are incredible. And it just, I won't use this gentleman's name. Okay. But he's got a pretty nice barbecue operation back in St. Louis area. And you went by and dropped him off some samples, didn't you, Dave? And
who you're talking about now?
I think you know who I'm talking about.
Yep.
You know what? It's amazing that pellets, the quality of pellets and the flavor of pellets to most people, and you even read this on the internet when somebody brings up about pellets, and if probably, let's just say 75% of the responses are, well, I bought a bag of pellets for $5. I bought this one for this. I bought this one for that. It was nothing to say about the quality and what they liked about a pellet. It all has to come down to how cheap they can buy a pellet is what 75% of the responses are there. And it just amazed me that, that the industry's like that bag of charcoal back in the day. Ain't that right, Dave? They don't have a clue what's in that bag, and they really didn't care. It's all about the cost of that bag. They didn't give a crap. Right. Is it going to cook some food? Is it going to taste okay? That's it. But all this crud, all this saying, all these fancy ding-a-ling bags out there, and then you start seeing okay, you got 75% people talking about what they buy a pellet for. Then you got about 22% of them talking about, well, they all taste the same. To me, I don't taste any difference in any of them. And it's like, there's probably the most honest answer out there right now.
Right.
Is because, there probably really isn't any difference between them. And of course, my answer anymore is, why don't you just go buy heating pellets if you want, a cheap, go buy a hardwood heating pellet. You're probably getting the same thing anyway, right?
Right.
So, but now you got me on my pellet rant right there.
Before you get too carried away, I heard you mention you interviewed Barbecue Bob. Did he talk bad about me? Because if he did, I need to get on him.
No, he did not. He did not. He did not. I think he said he really enjoyed your money there, and you were a great customer. Is what he said.
That was a traumatizing experience for me.
To become a pit boss dealer? Was that traumatizing? Huh?
Well, I told you I kind of developed my pellet on a pit boss, and of course, because I had my pellet in it, I think it kind of done good. But buy yourself about $70,000-$80,000 worth of them, and see how well you sleep at night.
You really find out what their technical department can do for you, don't you?
Oh man, yeah, yeah.
Those guys were changing those grills and doing so much changing out there. They didn't know what model I think had what parts in it, did they?
No. It's just about getting them out as fast as you can, as cheap as you can.
That was right into COVID time, wasn't it, too, Dave?
No, it ran into that a little bit, but before then it was just like, that wasn't quite ready, but we got we'll go ahead and send you the upgraded parts. And it's all it was just a parts deal, and what's so bad is, it's pretty local around here, and you sell so many of them to people and friends, and then have your personal cell phone number, and then you want to drop that thing in the river because it's ringing constantly. You got broken parts.
So now we've established that you are a big time pit boss dealer in Southeast Missouri down there, and you come up to Kansas City and you meet me, and you see something totally 100% different than the pit boss, didn't you?
I did.
And you went home and got you a PG 500, and that kind of turned your world upside down, didn't it?
Oh, it did. Yeah. You put a good pellet in the PG 500 and you'll experience flavor you've never tasted in your life. It's good.
And how many of your friends down there thought you were cooking on an offset?
Yeah. Well, I got a buddy of mine. We do briskets all the time, and we had a brisket competition. I don't remember if I told you that story, but he's like, I can cook better brisket than you, blah, blah, and you're never going to do it on a pellet cooker. And, he lost that bet. Just all close friends, all know us, a blind taste deal. We had to do it twice because he didn't believe it the first time, thought it was rigged. And, you put your grill and that pellet together, it's good stuff.
Well, and I really want to, let's take an advantage of this, discussion right now that we need to promote the closet pellet head. Okay. I mean, so many people out there don't want to be known that they're cooking on pellets. All right. And I had this in the competition barbecue world too. I mean, they would, have some cans out there, and they'd put some stuff on these trash cans and cook, and then they'd put 2 or 3 hours on product, and then they had their FEs in a trailer piped out. Okay. So these closet pellet heads are having to cook, in the pellet cooker, and they're two-stepping this stuff, And if I'd had this pellet back in the day, that had never happened probably, because this pellet definitely is a game changer in the world of that, if this technology in this pellet, I bet money. But I want to call them, they're closet pellet heads, and there's a ton of them. I mean, you got all these guys cooking on offsets, and they don't want anybody to know. I wonder how many of them are taking food to work, and that they've been cooking at home or whatever, and they cooked it on their pellet grill, and, that they're feeding people because they don't have the time and the effort to get, and then of course, trying to make the same flavor every time with the wood. I had Jeremy Yoder on, and you guys see that, and he'll tell you in that podcast that the worst person to do business with is the guy you get wood from in order to keep consistency. That was the biggest thing that came out of that. But then again, after he had me over and cooking with him, he found out that there's a whole nother world. But that's another thing too. I mean, if you guys, here's what I really like. Nobody's picked up on much of our Cookshack grills and equipment out there in this influencer world. First of all, we don't pay people to run our stuff, and all. Secondly is it's the top of the line, and you are definitely going to change your life and change your flavors with what we're doing. Why I can say this, you think that's a big, bold thing to say? You're looking at the first guy that changed the cook-off world and won and beat up on all the charcoal people and all the offset stuff back in the day. Okay. And I did it on a pretty regular basis for quite a while, enough to where when the money quit flowing, winning wise. And I also too wanted to pay more of attention to selling equipment. Wasn't so much. It was very hard to go cook at a contest without having a big group of people around me, and being able to stick at doing both the selling equipment, or it took away from the time of cooking so bad. It was more important to talk to that customer or potential customer about the equipment than it was, worrying about the food I was going to be turning in that day. So I had to make a decision, go one route or the other. And I'd much rather went down the route of commercial or of cookers, but also too, my high passion was being in the commercial industry. And, now we're worldwide by far. But yeah, there's the closet pellet head is a huge thing out there. A lot of people don't want to know, don't want their friends or people, or if they're real barbecue people, they're going to get to drag their pellet grill out and cook on it. Dave, give us a little background on your fishing and your shooting bows. You shot bows for competitiveness, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. Yep. Kind of the same way as, barbecuing, been shooting bow about that long as well. Started shooting a bow when I was 14. Was crazy about it. Lived for it. Loved competition because most of all, I also like to, to hunt. And then wife and come along, and she's a state champ. She, I don't remember the exact places, second, third, IBO, the Triple Crown, that kind of stuff. We got into ASA. My son comes along. He's a national, state, and world champion. And we done a lot of shooting, was kind of pretty ate up with that. Whatever I'm doing, it's like Grandpa always said, son, if you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly. So I got to go all the way. If it's shooting a bow or fishing, making pellets, don't matter, I give it my all, go ahead as hard as I can go. Yeah, pellets actually kind of messed up my fishing. I used to fish about 6 days a week, and that is if it was rainy season and it rained too. A lot of crappie fishing, spend a lot of time in the southern states catching them big slabs, and good stuff. You can smoke them a little bit on the grill. Wife loves to take just some, one of her favorites is just plain lemon pepper. She'll like a lemon pepper seasoning, and and I'll throw it on some of them fillets, put it on a PG 500 and grill them up. And I just grill them, sometimes you can lay some foil down, but I like just grill them right on the grill. Get a little bit of char on them as well. It's not like you would not like you would do a salmon or something. And
do you oil them a little bit? Do you put a little oil on them before you season them, or you just going straight on?
Yep, a little bit. Just a little bit. I'll spray on some vegetable oil, that just light, just kind of hang on. And, And I like to have a little bowl of butter, just brush on a little bit, because they're kind of quick, Yeah, crappie fillet is kind of quick, it don't take just a long time. Yep.
What temp do you run them at? Are you go straight on at 400? What do you do?
No, I'll bump that down into that 350 range, 400. A little bit hot for me, it'll dry them out too quick if I'm not careful, because I might be might be wanting to have a drink while I'm cooking and not paying attention. Got to make sure and pay attention. You put it on 400, you need to stand with it. Kind of fish go along pretty quick.
Right. Well, my understanding, I think you kind of like to entertain, don't you? You had I know you're getting ready to move, but you had a swimming pool and you'd have the whole family over. You guys do a lot of picking and grinning, And,
yeah, my boy plays in a band. I played a little music, but we like to sing and cook and drink and dance and carry on. We do a little bit all of it. Yep, sure enough.
Sounds like a hell of a good time.
I do, and if I put the word out that I'm going to cook a brisket, I'll have people that don't even like me show up.
Well, you're going to get a whole lot of more friends, my understanding, because I believe you told me you're moving close to one of your favorite places on this planet. You're going down there and you're going to build you a house right there along the current river. Is that true?
Building a house right on the current river. Yes, sir.
Well, you're going to be a river rat deluxe, How far out of Van Buren are you going to be?
Van Buren is probably upriver, 15 miles north upriver.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there were a lot of people put in there on the current to go floating?
They put in at Van Buren and come down to, depends if they go kayaking or canoeing, they'll go all the way into Donovan. But
okay.
Yeah, they come down, there's I haven't really clocked that float. Of course, I've never floated. I always have a boat. But they'll go down to, they call it Hickory Landing. They're at Hunter, just north of Grandin, there where I live. And that's a big takeout for them, you know, to have the floats from Van Buren. And then sometimes they come up all the way up just a little above my place and float down into the Doniphan area. The river is big on, I mean, it's a big attraction. You know, it's a clear river. See the bottom.
I think I floated it at least 3 times. Yeah.
Oh, is that right?
As a kid.
All the way from Kansas City?
Yeah, no, we get down there and put in at Van Buren, you know, and
yeah,
it was a lot of fun as my mom and dad would put together a float trip and then invite friends and family and stuff like that.
It's a big thing down here.
I don't think I've done it since I was out of high school. I haven't been down there, but it sure sounds like a good time to go do again, and especially if I can go down and knowing I'm going to have a place to stop and get some good barbecue. Maybe I could get a dinner.
You're going to be bringing ribs when you come.
There.
Yeah, there's a little toll guy down there on the bank, and you got to produce some ribs before you can come on up to the house.
You're going to be a troll, huh? You're going to have a toll. Well, Dave, I want to thank you a ton for coming on. And, you know, hopefully our people will enjoy hearing this and understand, you know, what, you know, some of the wood market and what's going on out there. And then, you know, hear about the experiences you've had of being a dealer for some of the equipment out there on the marketplace. So if anybody needs a good pellet, especially a Pit Boss grill mechanic, Dave would be a good one, you know, to get a hold of.
You do not put my number on that
almost
screen.
Anything that you need to do.
I will sink your tube if you float by.
Bob's gone. You're going to cut my to Bob. You know, he's gotten out of the barbecue industry now, and he's back in hearth. So he bailed on the Dansons, or the Dansons bailed on him. I don't know which way it went, but I think Dansons are pretty much out of the barbecue industry now.
Well, you know, Eddie, I sit and think, you know, me, I want to go to the river, you know, kind of hang out. Mm-hmm. You know how passionate I love to make the pellets, love to make good barbecue. And just like you said, you get on the internet and it's how much a bag, how much I beat my brains out for a long time trying to make a super duper pellet. And it's hard to get enough traction because it's a little more costly, you know, and it's not huge.
Oh, yeah, it's not cheap. I mean, you know,
it's not huge, but it's the freight, you know, local, it's not bad, but you know, just like you say, commercial.
People don't realize what they're paying for in that bag's diesel for hauling that stuff around.
Yes.
It's diesel. You know,
yeah,
I mean,
they're so freight intense, it's crazy.
It is freight intense, and some of these places use them as false leaders too. But also, you know, here again, I'm going to go back to if it tastes the same and they taste as the next one does, it probably is. You know,
right?
If you can't taste a difference in it, and it's, you know, well, I'm not saying the stuff's not in there. It's just that once the phenols are out of it, once it's kiln dried down, what is to tell the difference between hardwood fiber and flavor? It's just probably not there, you know. So anyway, thank you again, Dave. Look forward to seeing you here before too long, and stay healthy, my friend.
Good to see you,
smoky.
Eddie.
All right, take care.
You too.
Bye-bye. You've been listening to Pellet Cooker University. Thanks for joining me here at Pellet Cooker University. I'm Fast Eddy. If you liked today's episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, drop a comment. It helps us feed the fire, grow the channel, and keep the smoke rolling. And if you're serious about cooking, check out Cookshack.com, the leader in high-quality commercial pellet cookers and grills. See you next time.